Imagine stepping onto a racetrack in a go-kart, only to watch your opponent blur past in a Formula One car. No amount of willpower or perfectly timed shifting is going to close that gap. When the physical realities of a competition are entirely against you, brute force is a guaranteed path to failure. In ancient Indian mythology, this exact scenario plays out between two divine brothers, Ganesha and Kartikeya. Both wanted a singular, unique fruit that granted the eater immortality and boundless knowledge. But there was only one, and neither wanted to share it. The dispute was brought before their parents, Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati, high in the Himalayas at Mount Kailash. They needed a definitive way to decide who rightfully deserved the prize. The brothers faced a classic dilemma. When your opponent holds an overwhelming physical advantage, trying to outmuscle them on a level playing field is pointless. You have to find an alternative route to the finish line. A visiting sage named Narada Muni proposed a seemingly straightforward test. The first brother to circle the entire universe 3 times and return to Mount Kailash first would take the fruit. For Kartikeya, this was an ideal scenario. He was a warrior god of action, and his designated vehicle was a supernatural peacock capable of staggering flight speeds. The physical demands of the race perfectly matched his assets. Ganesha was built completely differently. He had a heavy, elephant-headed frame, and his chosen vehicle was a small, terrestrial mouse. Put those two next to each other on a starting line. How exactly does a ground-bound, heavy-set competitor beat a soaring warrior in a race across the cosmos? The physics simply don't allow for a head-to-head win. A massive physical advantage naturally creates tunnel vision. When you can rely entirely on speed, you tend to take the rules at face value, completely missing the lateral moves hidden in the fine print. Kartikeya wasted no time. He mounted his peacock and launched into the sky, expending massive amounts of energy to cross the physical expanse of space. He executed the challenge exactly as it was spoken. Back at the starting line, Ganesha didn't move. Instead of forcing his tiny mouse into a futile sprint, he stayed completely still and analyzed the exact phrasing of the challenge. Then he simply stood up. He walked slowly around his parents, Shiva and Parvati, completing exactly 3 circles, and returned to his spot. When the odds are physically stacked against you, immediate execution is a trap. Stopping to question the boundaries of the problem can save you from spending a lifetime running a race you were never designed to win. At first glance, this looks like a weak technicality. Walking a 5-foot lap around 2 people seems entirely disconnected from the requirement to circle the physical cosmos. But Ganesha cited philosophical evidence. He pointed to the ancient writings of the Puranas and the Vedas, which define the supreme creators as the embodiment and absolute container of all existence. This diagram shows the logic he used. By regarding his parents as the container of reality, the entire macrocosm of the universe collapses into a single accessible point. In his view, circling the parents was conceptually identical to circling their entire creation. He applied a conceptual shift to the parameters. Shiva and Parvati acknowledged the accuracy of his argument. 3 short laps around the center point satisfied the requirement without requiring a single mile of spaceflight. Finding a loophole requires looking past the literal command to find the underlying truth. When you understand the nature of the challenge that deeply, physical limitations cease to matter. Eventually, Kartikeya crossed the finish line. He had successfully executed an unimaginable physical feat, pushing his stamina to the absolute limit. But when he looked up, he saw Ganesha sitting completely rested, already enjoying the fruit. Kartikeya felt cheated by what he saw as a mere technicality. Disgusted by the outcome, he abandoned Mount Kailash entirely and exiled himself far to the south, settling in Palani. Extreme effort is highly inefficient if it is pointed in the wrong direction. Grinding through a literal interpretation of a challenge will absolutely guarantee exhaustion, but it doesn't guarantee a win. The mechanics of this myth apply directly to any situation where you are outmatched. When you find yourself facing a competitor with more power or deeper resources, your first move should be to refuse their terms of engagement. You have to step off the physical track and map out the conceptual one. Often, the physical challenge we're presented with is just one interpretation of the path to success. The real objective might be accessible through a different route entirely. Take a look at the unwinnable races you are currently running. Ask yourself if the boundaries keeping you behind are strict laws or just universally accepted assumptions that nobody bothered to verify. True wisdom isn't about running the fastest race. It's about realizing exactly where the finish line resides before you take your first step.